Hello and welcome back everybody to the Food Build Factory, where today we're going to take a look at the Star Scribe. That's the lovely lady you can see on screen right now. And as always, I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first part of the video, and in the second half of the video, we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, equipment, and everything else. So let's get right into it. What this character is going to be about is we are playing as a rifleman, which utilizes the Tesla shotgun. And that's pretty much the whole base of this character. Now, another interesting thing is that I am centering the character a little bit around a specific piece of armor, or not piece of armor, but set of armor, which is the solar armor, which gives you like regeneration whenever you are above 60% health, I think it is. Yeah, 60%, pretty sure at least. And yeah, little disclaimer by the way, I really hope we can make it through the video without crashing the server. I was actually pretty divided on if I actually am going to record the video today, just because I have played for like 2 hours and I had some crashes, so I really hope we can get through this whole video without having a crash. And yeah, it's a pretty straightforward build. Now, the first thing you're probably going to notice is that whenever we are talking about a Tesla rifle, it is very rare to see people use any other modification than the automatic barrel for this thing. And there's a good reason for it, which is that, yeah, the automatic barrel is just easily the one that has the best DPS. And whenever you're using another barrel, there's 3 other options. You're kind of missing out a little bit in terms of DPS. For day-to-day use, I actually kind of prefer some other options than the automatic barrel. Like day-to-day use, I'm considering stuff that I'm doing here, killing ghouls and such. But yeah, especially when we're going against tougher enemies, you will see that this thing struggles to keep up a little bit. However, one thing I'm going to do in this video is something that I'm not really mentioning too often, because most of my builds are centered around a specific weapon. And with a whole lot of weapons in this game, you can actually do that. Just finish the whole game or play as long as you want to with that specific weapon and that specific weapon only. But one thing, if you are someone who just wants to play the game with something you particularly like, a specific weapon that may not be too good, but you like it for what it is, there's just always good backup weapons. No matter what kind of weapon class you're using, be it heavy weapons, be it rifles, pistols, pretty much all of them have one really good option that you can just carry around. And I will probably utilize my option when we're going against the Scorched Beast in just a few minutes, maybe like 2 or 3 minutes from now. And I choose to just use a plasma flamer on this occasion. Nothing too fancy, it's a standard one, not an enclave one, and that's pretty much my go-to pick whenever you're playing as a rifleman, which this character is classified as, despite using a shotgun barrel. It's not a bad decision to have something like this as a backup. Now, obviously, if you have access to a good plasma flamer, there obviously is the question why you wouldn't want to build your character around that. But it's a very ammo-hungry thing. It doesn't hold together too well. Now, it's definitely possible to make a character build around it. I have done so in the past, and it was a lot of fun. But it has its use as a backup weapon. I personally would argue that it's even better as a backup weapon than being your main weapon. And yeah, despite being an automatic weapon, it also benefits from rifleman. So this is an odd thing about this build, where we are a rifleman character, but both of our weapons wouldn't probably be a rifle in your first pick. Like, if you saw those weapons, you would argue like, yeah, the Tesla weapon is a shotgun, and the the plasma flamer is an automatic weapon. But yeah, both of them benefit from our particular rifleman perks. And yeah, that's it. Now we just have to cripple the Scorched Beast. Scorched Beasts in particular are something that I found a little bit menacing. when it comes to this build. Not because they are dangerous to us, they have pretty much no chance to kill us. It's just a bit tedious, as they often are. But one thing that you have to consider whenever you're playing this game, Scorch Beasts in particular, they can just be a nuisance, and there's no specific reason why you would want to fight them. They're not particularly good enemies to fight. Now, just to show you that when it comes to Scorch Beasts, I wanted to quickly show you that the Tesla rifle is not the best option. So that's why I have this here Flamer with me as a backup, and that was basically it. So 99% of the game, I would say, I'm just using my Tesla, and other than that, I'm using the Flamer. Now, this works particularly well on this occasion, and that's when I want to talk about the specific decision to go for a charging shotgun barrel on the Tesla rifle. So, yeah, as I said, I didn't want to use the automatic barrel for the simple reason that there is a lot of good videos about it. So, yeah, there's good coverage. It's pretty straightforward. Probably do one in the future, but on this occasion I wanted to do a semi-automatic version of the weapon. And if you do that, you have three choices basically. The first choice is to just go for the standard barrel that comes attached with it, which is just a semi-automatic version of the weapon. It has the lowest base damage. I think the automatic has a little lower base damage, but obviously way more DPS. However, there is one specific problem with it. I have used it in the past. I'm pretty sure I have used it on one of my builds. It's pretty good, actually. It would probably even be the best bet for this particular character, but I hate the way it looks because it just looks unfinished. It looks like a glitch where part of your weapon just isn't there. And if you don't want to use that, you're left with two options, which is the charging barrel and the charging Tesla barrel. Shotgun barrel, sorry. I was going with the charging barrel for a while because that is the one with the highest damage of all of them, but you have to charge it up, as you can probably tell by the name, which is also the case for our shotgun. But there's one specific reason why I went for the shotgun, which is the shotgun being a shotgun, meaning that it has multiple, I want to call it projectiles, but I'm pretty sure it's not projectiles. You probably are aware of what I'm talking. So the shotgun shoots multiple arcs of electricity, which is pretty cool. And it has one benefit, which is it works really well with the Tormentor perk, meaning you have a really good chance to stagger an enemy and cripple an enemy. And this ultimately proved to be the more efficient way to go for me. At the cost of a little bit of damage. So I went with the charging barrel first and played with it for a while, and everything was going good, it was great. But whenever I went against something that was tougher, like say a glowing ghoul or Scorch Beast, like we just had the situation, it was kind of hard to cripple them. And I mean, I could have just switched to the flamer barrel anyways and used it like that, but I wanted to have some synergy going on here. And that's why I decided to go with the shotgun, because it actually, for a rifleman character, is, in my opinion, one of the best, has one of the best abilities to cripple enemies. Now, you can't really target specific limbs too well, but that didn't prove to be too much of a problem. Typically, within 5 or 6 shots, I can cripple an enemy to the point where it doesn't really move anymore, and therefore becomes a very easy target for me to take out with my flamer. And that's why ultimately I decided to go with the shotgun barrel. And I had a lot of fun with it. Also, the man-stopping power that comes with the amount of stagger you're getting is pretty significant. Like, this really manages to uplift the character very well. And also it works very well together with the overall theme of this character, which is it is a pretty good tank. Now, a pretty big part of this character is that we are running around in solar armor, which gives you this regenerating power, and I really like this armor. It's great for obvious reasons. Now, this basically is one of the better armors whenever you're not wanting to use power armor in order to get tanky, just because basically the regeneration you're getting makes you more tanky. It's pretty straightforward. I don't think I have to explain too much to you, and you actually don't have to do a whole lot in order to get the benefit from this thing. Like, it's pretty straightforward stuff, really. But you can really lean into it and therefore make a super tanky character, to the point where no vampire's weapon is needed or anything. There's very little stuff that can actually damage you too much. And one particular thing before we talk a little bit more about the armor and my choices when it comes to that, is that during the video you see that I'm constantly shooting the floor rather than shooting enemies themselves. And this is a pretty specific quirk when it comes to the Tesla the Tesla rifle, which is if you're shooting the floor, you do less damage to the enemy than if you were to shoot it directly. So if you are shooting the floor and it arcs away from the floor, hitting an enemy, you do, I think it's half damage of your base damage, compared to if you're shooting the enemy directly, you're getting full damage. The thing is though, whenever you're using a charging weapon like the charging shotgun barrel or the charging barrel, if you're just tapping the button, you're doing less than half damage. So you actually have to charge it up in order to do full damage, and this charge up takes a little while. It takes like 2 seconds, which in and of itself wouldn't be too crazy. However, my main problem with it is that ultimately your DPS is just worse than shooting the floor and hitting an enemy with reduced damage, as counterintuitive as this sounds. But in addition to that, the charging seems a little bit laggy. Comparing it to something like the Gauss rifle, which I personally like a lot, which also has charge, you can really fluently charge, shoot, but whenever it comes to the Tesla rifle, for some reason the charging oftentimes doesn't register. So you charge, you shoot, you start to press the button again in order to charge, but your weapon will not charge. You have to release the button again and charge again. I just didn't like it too much, so most of the time I'm just trying to rely on shooting multiple times. And I found that in terms of DPS, I was actually having a great time. You see during the video, damage is not really our main problem. The only situations where it is, which, as I said, tougher enemies like Scorch Beast or Sheep Squatch or something like that, you have your backup weapon, but you will rarely find yourself using it. Now, in addition to all of that, the fact that you are constantly hitting multiple enemies also makes up for the relatively low damage of this weapon, obviously. I mean, it's one of the selling points of the weapon. And yeah, these high DPS guys, by the way, they can definitely chew through our armor to a point where we don't get our regenerative powers at this point. So we should be under 60%, and as you can see, we're not getting any regeneration, but fear not. We obviously have a little bit of a backup, which is just using a stim pack. And we also invested a little bit in order to make those more powerful, because after all, if we find ourselves in a situation where we have to use a stim pack, this will probably be the situation where we want it to be as effective as possible. But yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to the weapon. And in terms of the armor, I found that, yeah, I went with a full set of Vanguard's armor. The rest of the effects was relatively uninteresting for me, to be honest, because ultimately it didn't matter too much. We're not relying too much on action points on this occasion, and there really isn't anything too crazy about it. So ultimately what I did with my armor is basically just use a full set of Vanguard's armor, and in addition to that we will see I do have some perk points spent in order to increase my damage and energy resistance even further. So we are actually at a pretty high amount of resistances. We are somewhere in the 500s to 600s, if I recall correctly. And that's pretty far above the point of diminishing returns, which for a lot of people always seems to be a stupid decision. I personally still like to do it if I want to be tanky, because even though in comparison to lower resistances, increasing your resistance at that point doesn't add too much, it still makes a noticeable difference if we're talking about 100 resistance more or something like that. And yeah, that's basically the whole story behind that. And as you can see here, just by hitting enemies that are within the vicinity of the one we are actually targeting, you constantly find yourself crippling enemies around you and therefore taking them out of the fight. So overall, this character works out really well. I really like it. Had a lot of fun with it. Now, one thing I haven't really talked about so far is that on this occasion, by the way, I'm using charge shots just because it's only one character left. And you can see here, it's a little bit tedious, so shooting the floor, in my opinion, makes for better gameplay. Yeah, what I haven't talked so far about is the obvious fact that this is a Brotherhood character, pretty straightforward here. I always like the Star Scribe outfit we are rocking. It's one of my favorite vanilla outfits in the game. It's just really cool. It overrides your backpack, which in certain situations can be a little bit of a nuisance if you have a skin you really want to rock, but it can also be of great benefit, to be honest. I sometimes really enjoy the fact that I can just put that on. I mean, obviously nowadays we do have the option to turn off our backpack, but since that's just account-wide, I tend to not use that too much. And yeah, the overall aesthetic is pretty cool. I have the Valorous Alistair helmet, pretty sure that's what it's called, which works really well with the whole character in my opinion, so I really like that. And yeah, the only thing I haven't mentioned so far, which I really wanted to talk about in this video, is something that, yeah, I use the Grenadier perk here, which increases the distance your shotgun can arc between enemies. Now, this is a pretty weird thing, but it's just a quirk about the weapon that's pretty well known, but I figured I'd just talk about it anyways. And on this occasion, these guys take a big beating, but I just noticed they're both legendary, so they have a relatively high HP pool, and yeah, that's basically it. Not enough though to justify, in my opinion, to utilize my flamer. Also, even if you're fighting enemies that are tougher and take a little bit longer, the sheer fact that just by attacking them you will also attack enemies nearby, it's not really ultimately turning out to increase the time you need too much, if that makes sense. Like, clearing an area still doesn't feel too long, just because in the time you're killing that one guy, you have a good chance of killing 5 or 6 guys around, so it's not wasted time just shooting one enemy. And yeah, that just makes it worthwhile in my opinion. Also, I really just, I love how the Tesla works. Like, you're not seeing an enemy, you're shooting the floor and it's up. You can see there's a guy, you can see somehow we attacked one guy here, which is one of the mole miners that unfortunately still don't have a new loot pool, which is kind of, it's kind of a bummer, I guess, but you know. Goodbye, guy. I really love all of the flashes going on. I mean, I'm spending a lot of time to sell the Tesla rifle to you, but I'm pretty sure everyone already knows how good it is. The main thing here was to show that you don't necessarily need a commando character, in my eyes, in order to enjoy this thing. And yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to our gameplay part. And I'm now going to take a look at our mutations, perks, and everything. So yeah, let's take a look at it. Starting off with our mutations, and on this occasion, when it comes to mutations, it's something that bugs me a little bit when it comes to Fallout 76. Whenever you are playing a Brotherhood character, it just feels wrong to use mutations, but mutations are just such an integral part of Fallout 76. Playing without them sucks. Like, it's a pretty big downside that you have to endure on yourself. For no good reason. There's no benefit to not using mutations. So at least I wanted to keep it pretty low-key here, and on this occasion it actually worked out very well. All we have is Marsupial, Scaly Skin, and Speed Demon. This is the bare minimum, in my opinion. On this occasion, I mean, we could easily live without Scaly Skin, but yeah, Marsupial just to jump around higher, and Speed Demon to reload faster and move faster. These two at least, they make the biggest difference in my opinion, just because, yeah, traversing Appalachia without these two mutations just feels tedious. So that's why they are here, and yeah, Scaly Skin yet increases our resistances a little bit more. We will see how high they are in a second, and yeah. Another thing you could note about the solo armor is that it obviously is a very good armor for support characters, but this guy here is a solo character, and still I think the Vault armor can be great for solo guys. Going over to our equipment, we do have aristocrats here on both our weapons. We do have an aristocrats, inertial, reduced weight plasma rifle. Reduced weight, really good option for a backup weapon like this. And inertial is kind of a hit or miss here. I mean, it doesn't really add anything to us, but ultimately I just wanted to have something that gives us extra damage. Aristocrats, anti-armor, junkies, if you wanna bother with the addictions, you name it. Even Furious is good on this thing, especially since the way we are using it is against single targets. Keep it simple. There's not a whole lot you need. Obviously, faster fire rate would be great in order to increase our DPS a little bit more, but you saw how fast this thing melts, it's not a secret. We have a prime capacitor here, stabilized flamer barrel, and forceful stock to increase the duration a little bit. I didn't go for any sides because they would just add a little bit of weight for pretty much no benefit at all on this occasion. So yeah, keep it simple. Just a nice little backup weapon with a lot of DPS. And as for our main weapon, Aristocrats, 25 damage while aiming, faster reload, Tesla shotgun. I had a faster fire rate version, very similar to this. Typically, I think that the way we are using this faster fire rate could have been very interesting. I just didn't notice a big difference, if any at all. So I'm actually quite glad with the 25 damage while aiming. Something I haven't really utilized too much in the video as far as I can recall from just the last 15 minutes or so. But yeah, the big point here is faster reload. The weapon has a very low clip size, you can run through it very fast, and reload animation is relatively long. So having faster reload combined with ground pounder and speed demon is kind of necessary on this occasion. And for aristocrats, same as I said about the flamer, yeah, we just wanted to increase our damage a little bit. Yeah, and 25 damage while aiming. On first glance, it might seem a little bit stupid on a weapon that's designed to not being aimed, but on the other side, it still is a significant benefit because aiming is no problem if you don't have to aim correctly. It's ultimately just a press of the button to aim down sights and shoot for 25 more damage. I mean, it's relatively little because it is additive damage, but still, it's not like you have to aim, if you get what I mean. You just have to aim down sights and still don't aim. I think it's pretty obvious what I'm trying to explain here. Yeah, pretty straightforward, not a whole lot to say here. Charging barrel, everything I said during the video applies here. So I think there's not a whole lot left. I do have the Silver Shroud paint, which is one of the cooler paint jobs in the game because while it says Silver Shroud paint, it's actually just very straightforward and doesn't scream any faction or anything. It's just this nice little silver rusty look, which I really like. And in terms of sights, I didn't do anything. I went with the standard sights. The other only other option are reflex sights, which, yeah, they don't do anything here. I personally am a big believer that the Tesla rifle can be great in VATS. I really like to use it in VATS. At that point, the reflex sight would be great, but the way we are using it here, it's just no use for us, but 1 or 2 pounds more weight, so I decided to go with standard sights. And yeah, pretty respectable damage of 211, which is great. We shouldn't be under the influence of adrenaline at this point, so yeah, pretty cool. You saw it, pretty good damage. We lost quite a bit of condition here, but on this occasion it's one of the rare builds where I did not go with Gunsmith. I just have to force myself to do that every now and then, and I felt like it was pretty doable. Just so you have a reference, we started the build with the video with, I would argue, 110% conditions, so we ran through quite a lot, but keep in mind it's 15 minutes of straight up combat, so yeah, you can definitely run this thing without gunsmith in my opinion. We do have luck of the draw, just because we had some points left in luck that we didn't need, but yeah, that's pretty much it. And in terms of armor, Vanguard set, random other stuff, nothing too crazy in my eyes, nothing too noteworthy. We have a few endurance pieces, but yeah, it's really, I wanted to have a Vanguard set, which works really well, obviously, with the fact that we keep our health as high as possible at all times, which seems pretty straightforward, but I think you get what I mean. So, yeah. As I said, we have pretty high resistances. At full health, we have 600 damage, 200 energy, 510 energy resistance. We have a little bit of frost resistance from one of the legendary effects, but that's kind of negligible. And we do have a lot of poison resistance from a legendary perk. And yeah, typically up to 300 or 350, somewhat around that. Damage and energy resistance is where you really feel every bit of increase. At that point, it's called the point of diminishing returns. The more you invest into your resistances, the less return you will get. I personally still feel, I touched upon this during the video, still feel like when I'm going for a tanky character that it is worth increasing your resistances, just because it's not that big of a deal to do and it's relatively easy to do. So I like it and I feel like it worked out pretty well. We were pretty tanky and yeah. Last thing about our equipment here, in terms of our apparel, I do have a chemist backpack, which we don't see just because, as I said, the Star Scribe outfit, which we're looking at here, overrides the visuals of our backpack. Shielded Secret Service under armor, because for once, even though we are on a rifleman character, we don't need perception or agility at all, no luck. It's pretty much just for the endurance here. Having extra 4 endurance gives you a little bit of extra hit points, which is nice, and therefore that's why I went with it. And lastly, one of the previous scoreboard rewards, Valorous Alistair's helmet, which works really well with this kind of sci-fi boss character that uses energy weapons, in my opinion. And yeah, that's it when it comes to our equipment. And that leaves us with our perks. So in strength, we kept it simple, just 3 ranks in order to get blocker. If any melee damage comes through, if we take out a group of ghouls and they can get a hit in on us, this is one of the better defensive perks. 45% less damage from melee attacks. That's a huge defense, and yeah, that's why it's here. When it comes to perception, pretty jumbled for a rifleman character. Now, the obvious stuff that had to be here was Ground Pounder and Tank Killer. Tank Killer for extra armor penetration and a little bit of a stagger chance, which also works very well with our shotgun. Then Ground Pounder, faster reload, touched upon this. I mean, the hipfire accuracy doesn't really matter to us, but the faster reload definitely does. It says automatic rifles, but it does apply to non-automatic rifles. And then we had room for rank 2 of Rifleman, rank 3 of Expert Rifleman, and yet again rank 2 for Master Rifleman. And the reason we didn't max it out, it was Grenadier here. I pretty much said everything about it during the video. Just increases the range of at which our shots can arc between enemies, and it reduces it, it increases it dramatically. You really see a difference. Then we have Endurance maxed out, something you relatively rarely see on builds, but on this occasion, yeah, I really wanted to go all in on tankiness. So yeah, we do have Adamantium Skeleton. Now, I recently had a little bit of a discussion in the comment section where someone suggested that healing like from solar armor can heal your limbs. I looked at it a little bit. I did no scientific test or something, but I had the feeling that even with solar armor on and a pretty tanky character, without Adamantium Skeleton, I still felt like my limbs were going down pretty regularly, so I decided to go with it. Then we do a photosynthetic. During the day, when there is sunshine, it doesn't have to do with sunshine, it's just from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. We do get some health regen. Pretty straightforward. It's situational, of course, but yeah, it's a benefit. Syncs very well with our solar armor, so that's why it's here. Another one that I personally like a lot is Ghoulish. It's pretty good, despite on first glance you not really notice it. Like, there's some obvious things, like if you're using a gamma gun or something, you can heal yourself with it. But even then, despite being so situational, it's actually relatively common, I say, to fight in such situations. And what I'm referring to here is mostly fissure sites. Whenever you are near a fissure site, you do get some radiation damage, and this will just give you yet another bit of passive healing, which is really nice. Then we do have rank 2 of Fireproof. I didn't really show this, but our chest piece has the dance modification. So a dance chest piece with rank 2 of Fireproof is pretty much all you need. You saw it, we were attacked with missile launchers, barely a scratch. Obviously, if I had the room for it, I would max out rank 3 of Fireproof, but it didn't really feel necessary, and that way I had room for Ironclad here, just to give us yet more resistances. Now, another combination would have been rank 3 of Fireproof and rank 4 of Lifegiver, but that's neither here nor there here. Probably Lifegiver would have given us the better returns, but yeah, I wanted to have Ironclad, and that's it. Then we go over to Charisma, and something very special I don't have. Tenderizer here. No particular reason, yet again, similar to what I said about Gunsmith. I have to force myself every now and then to not use it, so I just went with Lone Wanderer here. 20% less damage and a little bit of extra AP refresh, which is nice. We do use AP refresh only for dodgy basically and running around, but still having it is nice, and less damage always is nice, especially on a character like this. When it comes to Tenderizer, nowadays it doesn't work, or at least it shouldn't work like it did, where multiple projectiles hitting an enemy at the same time will stack the damage buff. So this is something I think I have said wrong in some videos, because it's like half a year or a year ago where they implemented the fix to this, and since then, yeah, Tenderizer just always gives you the 10% damage bonus, it says, which still is a good perk. Still, we would have benefited from it here, but yeah, for once I felt like we didn't really need it, and since it doesn't give us a 40% buff but only a 10% buff, we could definitely live without it here. Then we go over to Intelligence. This is my only pet peeve really when it comes to this character, because thematically it would have been nice to have a more intelligent character, but ultimately, the way it worked out, I didn't really feel like I could justify an intelligence higher than 6 for batteries included, because we are carrying energy ammo here, and first aid was already a little bit of a stretch here, but I felt like, yeah, I said this during the video, most of the times we're not using any stimpaks here, but in situations where we do, we want them to be really efficient, and that's, yeah, whenever we get down to 50% health or whatever, no matter what we have equipped, like if we have a diluted stimpak or a super stim, with first aid rank 3 we will be back to 100% health most likely with the use of one single stimpak, and at that point we yet again get our full benefit from vanguards, and we get our passive healing, so most of the time one stimpak is enough during a fight to bring you back into peak condition. Then we go over to Agility, which for a character that doesn't really utilize Agility other than for Dodgy, it's still pretty high just because Agility is such a good stat. We do have Dodgy here, greatly increases our overall tankiness, and since we're not utilizing our AP for anything other than Dodgy, it's risk-free. It's just really good defense for no downside at all in this situation. Then we do have Adrenaline, and I already missed out on 2 perks that I pretty much always pick with this build, which are Tenderizer and Gunsmith, so Adrenaline I didn't want to give up on this occasion. It was just too good, worked really well here, and yeah, it also felt needed. Like, a little bit of damage buffs don't hurt. Then we do have Evasive. Everything I said about Ironclad is pretty much the same here, just extra resistances. We do have Action Girl, which This and Lone Wanderer combined are pretty much guaranteeing that dodgy works most of the time for us. And lastly, we do have rank 1 of Born Survivor. This is just a safety net. I didn't really need it, but since I had the legendary perk points left to max out my legendary perks, I ended up with 15 agility rather than 14. And I felt like, yeah, having 1 rank of Born Survivor is not bad, even though we're pretty much never utilizing it, so keep that in mind. It's just a safety net. And then we do have luck at 11, relatively high for a not Vets character, but on the other side, luck similar to agility is a pretty good stat, so there's always stuff to use. We do have Bloody Mass, not the greatest damage buff, but it still does a little bit for us, and mostly it makes enemies explode sometimes, which is nice. Then we do have Tormentor, 15% chance of crippling a limb with the rifle. This is huge. Now, the reason I said when I was talking about Tormentor in the video, I was also talking about staggering, not only crippling limbs. When I said that, what I was talking about is basically the fact that whenever you do cripple a limb of an enemy, the enemy does get staggered. So, yeah. It provides staggering as well as crippling, so very good, works really well with the Tesla shotgun. It's always something you have to test out. It doesn't work too straightforward, because, for example, good example, because we actually utilized the weapon on the Flamer. You would assume that Tormentor is crazy because with this high fire rate, you basically cripple a whole enemy within 2 seconds. I felt like it didn't work too consistently with that one, but with the shotgun it worked really well. So yeah, that's why Tormentor is here. And lastly, we do have Starch Genes and Luck of the Draw. Luck of the Draw, since we're not utilizing Gunsmith, it can help us here. Now, I was running with Ricochet for a while just to increase our tankiness yet a little bit, but it didn't feel too necessary. Probably would have helped a little bit against the Super Mutants, but yeah, ultimately I went with Luck of the Draw to just ever so slightly increase the duration our weapon runs without repairs, but not a necessary pick, of course. And Starch Genes, yeah, we want to keep our mutations, not getting new ones. And that leaves us with our legendary perks. Pretty quickly here, agility, luck, and intelligence just gives us access to extra perk points to use. What Rats really synergizes well with the armor, because if we're just having to keep using red away in order to keep our health high, that's a little bit of a nuisance. So not having any reds bother you for most of the time is nice and keeps your health high pretty much all of the time. Works really well with the solar armor. Funky Dots, this was a pretty straightforward pick in my eyes for the simple reason that I found one of the only things that really consistently got a little bit dangerous to me was fighting stuff like the Mylar Queens or such when they were stacking poison damage on me. That was really screwing my overall gameplay, and that's why Funky Dots is here. And lastly, I didn't really know what to use. Now, I could have used this legendary perk in order to increase yet one more of my stats and use stuff like Gunsmith or Ricochet, but I decided to go with Master Infiltrator just because I felt like even though our character isn't stat-wise all that intelligent, role-playing wise it still is kind of a intelligent character, and the ability to automatically unlock a lot of terminals and locks in this game really makes you feel more intelligent. Me at least. So yeah, that's why it's here. Even though this should never be your priority, rank 1 of Master Infiltrator lets you open every single lock, every single terminal that one can theoretically lock. You just have to do the minigame. Higher ranks just make it so you don't have to do the minigame anymore. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm really glad we made it through without actually crashing. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time. Bye.